Hey guys. It's so great to be back. Welcome to another episode of the Amanda Show. First of all, I want to apologize that I haven't had this discussion where we delve into news stories in about 2 weeks now because I have not been feeling too well, but I don't want to go into into that discussion. Just know that I'm a lot better and obviously we're getting into some exciting topics. Welcome. If you're new here, my name is Amanda Kalano, and on the Amanda Show, we discuss geopolitics from an African perspective. So, in the few weeks that have been gone, 2 weeks, I believe, in the 2 weeks that have been gone, a lot of things have happened. So, I'm going to discuss today the three topics we're going to discuss are going to be one is going to be a fresh off news stories, like off just out of the oven, it's really fresh. That's the first one. Then the other two are things that happened while I was away, but it's been on my mind because I think they are really important and I want us to discuss them. The first one, today is Saturday. I'm shooting this video on Saturday, 1st of March 2025. Yesterday, 28th of February 2025, President Zelensky had a face off with President Trump and Vice President JD Vance in the Oval Office. I want us to then, after that, after the face off, the Europeans came out and stood by Zelensky's side. Now, what I want to discuss about that occurrence is this is something I have been noticing ever since Trump came into office and he began to make certain moves. I noticed that the Europeans have not really been on his side, especially when it comes to bringing an end to the Russia Ukraine war. The Europeans have not been on his side. So, this thing that happened yesterday, for me, this is the clearest proof that the whole thing about the collective West, US, Europe, allies to the end, all of that is changing. You see, as the world, I've been telling you since that multipolar world is here, and the world is breaking into factions, and new spheres of influence are being created. And as this thing is happening, it's clear that Europe is moving away from the United States. In fact, United States and Europe, their whole love thing has come to an end. And maybe not in the case of the United Kingdom, but most of the whole US, Europe, transatlantic friendship, globalism, all of that is ended. That's the first thing I want us to discuss. Then the second thing that we'll be discussing is this happened 2 weeks ago, just as I was having the whole health issue. This happened 2 weeks ago. An American senator made a big accusation. Before now, we discussed it on the show that Donald Trump has put an end to, he put a pause to foreign funding, but right now he has dismantled the US aid. It's almost 90% gone. Now, but the American senator said in Congress that the US aid was funding terrorist groups, including Boko Haram. He mentioned Boko Haram. And if you're in West Africa, you know that the terrorism that we've had to deal with for a decade now, yes, a decade or more, a little bit over a decade now, has been with Boko Haram. But this guy has just come out to say in Congress that the United States is funding terrorism in Africa. I want us to do, and even apart after that, there was also a hearing in Congress where they mentioned that US aid is funding some terrorist group also in Somalia and across Africa. We are going to discuss all of that in this episode of the Amanda Show. And the third and final conversation we'll be delving into today is a news story, an investigative report from a Nigerian journalist, David Hundemi, that the British intelligence is involved in Africa. It's so involved in Africa, and particularly even in Nigeria and several prominent countries within Africa. It's so involved that it's tracking and tracing our social media conversations. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share your thoughts with me in the comment section below as we delve into the conversations. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link now in the description, and it's also on the screen. And don't forget that Ukweli, our African media movement, is live. With Ukweli, we are trying to create an African media infrastructure, a strong African media space where Africans will get the news without propaganda for our benefit. So that's what we are trying to do with Ukweli, where you can use the link in the description to sign up and join the Africa Media Movement, Ukweli. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. Let's delve into the stories. Guys, for about 15, 20 years, we've noticed the strengthening of the transatlantic alliance between the United States and Europe, particularly through the European Union. Well, it seems like all of that romance, relationship, friendship is ended. What we call in geopolitics, what we call the collective West, is it looks to me like it's officially over. What do I mean? Ever since Trump came into office back January 21st, because his inauguration was on January 20th. So ever since Trump came back into office on January 21st, 2025, he's been making some decisions. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with. But one of the things that I've really agreed with him on is bringing an end to the war in Ukraine. If we look at it, so far, Ukraine has been the biggest loser in this thing, right? So Trump coming in to say let's bring an end, because no matter what happens, peace is always important. And if Ukraine decided to keep fighting it out, there is no how, there is no universe, there is no, you can check multiple and multiple universes, and there is not one that Ukraine can defeat Russia. Even the United States knew it. Biden knew it. The idea of this whole Ukraine Russia thing was not the defeat of, or was not Ukraine was going to defeat Russia. No, they were trying to use Ukraine to weaken Russia, whom the United States considered as geopolitical competitor. That was what this whole thing was about. But anyway, Trump has been speaking and speaking that, oh, he's going to bring an end to this whole thing. And well, we've been watching him gradually make moves. But once he spoke with Vladimir Putin, and then the representatives of Russia and United States met in Saudi Arabia, the Europeans lost it. The Europeans lost it. And so from that moment, I began to notice a crack in the whole transatlantic alliance that has been brewing for and strengthening for several decades now. Yesterday, when Zelensky sat in the White House and spoke in the Oval Office and had that face off with JD Vance and President Trump, that's when I said, you know what? This is officially the end of the collective West. This is the end of the collective West. So, what does that mean? That means that, remember, a few weeks ago, I had a conversation on this show, and I told you that based on the things that I was hearing Donald Trump saying, it seemed to me that Donald Trump was focusing more on the Americas, with his renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, to his discussion about the Panama Canal, to several things, all, even with Greenland, with Canada becoming the 51st state. All of that conversation seemed to me like Trump was hedging a stake in the Americas to say this is America's stuff, right? Then after that, I mentioned during that conversation, I mentioned that this clearly means that we are going to a geopolitics of spheres of influence. That means every sphere, every superpower, every power was going to have its sphere of influence. United States clearly was going to be in the Americas. We would have Russia in Europe. We would have China in certain parts of Asia. We would have India in the Indian subcontinent. So I mentioned all this, and I said that okay, even in the Middle East, there's talking. We also have Israel. We also have Saudi Arabia. But so far, it seems like Turkey is the major power in the Middle East, although there is a competition for that. Well, I said that the only thing now is that in Africa, Africa seems to be the only place that is open for anybody can come in to have a field day with Africa. Well, this is furthering that point that I made. So now that it looks like the whole collective West alliance is over, or maybe if it's not completely over, is severely damaged. Because okay, Germany had its elections this week that we are just coming out of. It had it on the 23rd of February. And during the elections, the winner of the election, who is going to be the chancellor, Merz, he said something. He said that Europe needs to divorce itself from America. I'm paraphrasing, but he said Europe needs to divorce itself from America. We've heard after Donald Trump and JD Vance and Zelensky had that argument, that shouting match in the White House. European leaders came out speaking up for Zelensky. Macron did. Kaya Kallas, who is the supposed to be the chief diplomat of the EU, did that. Ursula von der Leyen did that. Um, the the guys in Poland did that. Germany, everyone, like most of the so-called American allies in Europe, came out to stand behind Zelensky and say, you know what, we choose you over the United States. So what does that mean? This means it looks to me like um, Europe has decided to take full responsibility for the sinking ship that is Ukraine. Europe has decided that it is more important for Ukrainians to keep dying. It is more important for Ukraine to be completely destroyed. And Europe, don't forget that, as we said, that the biggest loser in this whole thing, in this whole project, Ukraine, is Ukraine itself. Let's not forget that it hasn't been an easy task, or it hasn't been a walk in the park for the Europeans. Germany has lost its dependable gas, energy, cheap energy from Russia after, according to Seymour Hersh, Joe Biden blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Europe has lost that. Germany is no longer competitive because right now energy is expensive. Look at the whole inflation craziness going on in Europe. Look at the whole political instability. Many times we seem to ignore that the political instability we are seeing in France, we are seeing in Germany, we are seeing, yes, Germany, even if Merz and his party just came in victorious, the they will still need a coalition to, they don't have popular mandates. Do you get? We are seeing it all across Europe. All of these things boils down to this Ukraine. It's Ukraine. Ukraine has been a bad decision for the Europeans, but clearly these politicians in Europe are saying that it is better to go down with a sinking ship than to bring peace to Ukraine. So you can clearly see that these people are not even the friends of Ukraine, because if you're a friend of Ukraine, you'll be looking for peace. If you're a friend of Ukraine, you want to preserve the state of Ukraine. The longer this thing takes, the more Ukraine is decimated. But the Europeans don't care. So how is that our business in Africa? Let me tell you, this shows clearly. I have been saying this since I started this show back in 2024. This shows clearly that the multipolar world is here. In fact, exactly 1 week today, I had a discussion with S.L. Kathan. He's an Indian geopolitical analyst and follows politics, very intelligent man. We had a conversation about the multipolar world, and we discussed the pros, the cons, where the big players in the multipolar world and where Africa will fit into all of this. It's a very insightful conversation, and I suggest that you go and watch it, because right now the world is changing drastically. In fact, yeah, back when I started talking about this thing in 2024, about the multipolar world and the way things are changing, I never could have imagined that we'll be at a point where Europe and United States will be gradually, maybe even forcefully turning away from each other. But here we are. Here we are. Meaning that now that Europe is not, these leaders currently in Europe are telling themselves that they cannot rely on America for anything. This is the Trump administration. Yes, Trump just has 4 years. But let's not forget that at one point, right now, one of the things we complain about with American geopolitics is the rise of the neoconservatives, that is the neocons, right? We complain about that. But there was a time that they were not such a big deal. And it began in the 1990s, I believe. In 1990s, under the Clinton administration, the neocons became strong, right? Now, it seems to me that there is a rising tide in the United States, and the neocons are losing footing. Of course, they are still a very powerful force, but it seems to me that they are losing footing day and day after day. And what is getting stronger in the United States is this whole MAGA ideology. Now, with MAGA ideology, you can say, all right, the Democrats are not onto that. Yes, but there's also a sect within the Democratic Party. While they may not be as prominent as MAGA in the Republican Party is, there's a sect in the Democratic Party that is saying, let us take care of America. Let us take care of America. They are speaking of America's workers' rights. They are speaking about health for Americans, free healthcare for Americans. They are speaking about free education for Americans. So these people, while they are not, like I said, they are not the overwhelming majority in the Democratic Party, these people are actually invested in, you can say it's like a left wing populist movement. The same way the MAGA is a right wing populist movement, these ones are a left wing populist movement. So, what I'm saying now is that in the next 4 years, I may be wrong, but I don't think that I am. But in the next 4 years of Donald Trump, this whole populist ideology of America first is going to get stronger. The way we saw the neoconservatives rise in the 1990s, we are going to see this ideology rise. This America first, take care of America. We are going to see this ideology rise. If you don't believe me, look at the way, um, I believe his name is Jenk, yes, of the Young Turks. Look at the way he's beginning to align himself with MAGA. He's aligning himself with MAGA because some of the things that they are saying in MAGA fit his own populist left wing ideology. And this is the Young Turks, is the biggest left wing alternative media voice in the United States. So I said that to say that some people may just say, okay, after Trump, things are going to go back to normal. I don't think so. I think that after Trump, if it's a Republican that takes after Trump, let's say JD Vance. JD Vance is fully MAGA. Do you understand? And now, one of the conversations they're having within the electoral base of the left wing party, of the Democrats, one of the conversations that they're having is how can they create their own MAGA, but like left wing MAGA, so that they can push a candidate who is going to win the presidency. This is what is going on. So Europe has arranged its mind that it cannot bank on the United States anymore. Do you understand? Europe realizes that it cannot bank on the United States. So Europe is going to now begin to look out for itself. Why am I saying that? Because I asked the question, how does this affect us in Africa? Now let me tell you. Europe is one of the things they are discussing now strongly is that they want to build their own European security architecture, right? And they want to build their own European military. To build military, you need industrial base. For an industrial base to work, for Europe to have industries that run to produce weapons and to produce this kind of technology they need energy. You cannot run an industry with solar panels. You need energy, dependable energy. They have cut off Russia. They have cut off Russia. United States, but they will still be buying, but United States energy is very expensive. Where can they look? Africa. If you look at, remember that in 2023, Italy, was it 2023 or 2024? I think it was 2023, but I may be mistaken about the year. But Italy came into, Giorgia Meloni of Italy came into Africa to discuss and how they want to do partnership with Africa. But everything that she said boiled down on energy. They need Africa's energy. There's a pipeline that they are building that is supposed to take gas from Nigeria through Niger Republic all the way to Europe. They need our energy. They need our energy. You're asking, where does Africa come into this? If you had listened to the conversation that they had, President Trump, President Zelensky, and Vice President JD Vance, among other officials, if you listen to their that they had yesterday, as I'm when I'm recording this, right? That's 28th of February. If you listen to that conversation, Trump was saying they need Ukraine's rare earth minerals. What did he say he needs the rare earth minerals from? Military technology and AI. One of the places, the main, now speaking about this Ukraine one, the main place where this whole Ukraine's rare earth minerals is in the place where this battle with this war with Russia is going on. Russia has even taken most those lands that Russia took back in 2022. Yes, those lands are home to these minerals, these rare earth minerals. Another place you can get these rare earth minerals is Africa. Europe will look to Africa. United States will look to Africa. Remember, I told you last year that there was this think tank in the United States that released a report. And in the report, the think tank suggested that then it was under Biden, that Biden should look towards East Africa for certain minerals the United States needs now. Critical minerals. Africa is where these people would look. Energy, they will need Africa. Rare earth minerals for this military technology, for AI, they will need Africa. So if Europe wants to build itself to say, okay, they want to build it themselves to be strong, I don't know how they want to do this, honestly, because you don't start building an industry overnight. But let's just say that they are determined to build like sophisticated military in Europe, right? Let's just say they want to do it. They need Africa. They need Africa. Last year I told you that the UK was opening up, the UK military, right, was opening up something for Africa, not just Africa, but like Commonwealth countries to come in, particular, also including African nations, can come in to do certain things within the UK military. These people, they cannot raise. I think I read a report. I may be wrong, but I think they said something like UK can muster only 25. Is it 25,000 troops? Russia has 1.5 million. If they want to compete with Russia, Russia has 1.5 million. Think about that. Maybe France is in a bit of a better place, but together, I don't think Europe can quickly raise an army of hundreds of thousands. I don't know how Europe wants to do it. They will need people. What's not to say that they might open up the Africans? Oh, come and join us, right? You join us, you get citizenship. You join us, you get permanent residency. These people want to build an army. They want to build a military. They want to build a military. And every time Europe has found itself in a situation like this, where they wanted to do something with military, they came to Africa to source. We have the world wars as examples. So do not rule off that in the next, maybe in the next year or some years down the line, you'll be hearing that European countries are recruiting African soldiers to give them permanent residency and give them citizenship and pay them and all of that. Don't be surprised. So I keep saying this, that one thing that I've realized with Africa is we tend to think that we exist in a vacuum, that things just happen away from us. We do not realize that we're a core part of the way the world functions. The way the world functions, we're a core part of it. So even now that we're saying, oh, America and Europe, they're divorcing, that whole um all over alliance is coming to an end, blah blah blah. So we just think, oh yeah, it's just them. I'm just making you aware. I want you to realize now that there are consequences of this thing. Because if they're not getting military protection from the United States and they have annoyed Russia that is on their border, they will need military. They cannot go and ask China for military protection. They want to build their own. And don't forget that these European countries are colonialists. There was a time they were world powers. I keep saying this about the United Kingdom. United Kingdom still finds it hard to believe that it's inconsequential when it comes to geopolitics. He finds it hard. I said it also about France. That one of the reasons that France was trying to hold on to its colonies, right, in Africa, is because it could not. Like, if it loses Africa, then it will dawn on France that France is inconsequential in global conversations. I've said it several times on this show. So, coming from a continent and former world powers who find it hard to stomach the fact that they are no longer the big deal when it comes to geopolitics. Meanwhile, the Russia they have been antagonizing for centuries is still a big deal when it comes to geopolitics. They're going to make very dangerous moves. They're going to make very desperate moves. And when they're making desperate moves, don't think that they will look away from Africa. Don't think they will look away from Africa. I am suggesting again that you go and watch that discussion that I had with S.L. Kanthan about the multipolar world. Once you listen to that conversation, you understand the gravity of the situation that we are in today's world. And if he said something, S.L. Kanthan said something very important that I wish every African would hear it. He said that Africa has just the next, say, 25 years to get things done. Because if it fails to hit this thing from now to the next 25 years, I don't think Africa can do anything again. Now, this is me adding that part. I don't think Africa can do anything again. He said, because right now, yeah, when they think of Africa, everyone always thinks about our minerals, our natural resources, and all of that. Yes. But the most important thing that Africa has that nowhere else on the planet can compete is our human resource, our people. We have the youngest population in the world. It's better to use this young population now put them to work. It's better to put this population to work now for the benefit of Africa. Because if we allow this young population grow and the next 25 years, they are not likely to reproduce the way the generation before them reproduced. Do you understand? For example, the number of children our grandparents had is more than the number of children our parents had. The number of children we are having are less than the number of children our parents had. Back then, you would see like, oh, an African woman has 10 children, 12 children. Then by the time it got to that was like our grandparents, right? For our great grandparents. By the time it got to our grandparents, we are saying like eight, eight children. By the time it got to our parents, it was like five. In our generation, we are seeing three. Our children are not likely to have the same number of children that we had. So it is important. It is important that we use this moment now. And that's one of the things that S.L. Cartan said. That I'm like, yes, he's so right. It is important that we use this moment now and our people now to the benefit of Africa. News just came out yesterday that Japan 2 to 1, meaning for every one child that is born, two people are dying. That and this it's a very worrisome thing in Japan. It's very worrying. But don't think that in 50 years from now it cannot happen to Africa. Don't think so. So now we're in a very crucial time. And Africa has to leverage everything that we have, beginning with our population. Beginning with our population, we need to leverage it. Before we now start thinking about minerals and all of those things, we need to leverage it. So the whole collective West romance, friendship forever is officially over. It is officially over. Europe is scrambling, trying to find relevance. And one of the places Europe will look is Africa. United States, I don't know how things will change because I'm recording this on Saturday. This whole conversation happened yesterday on Friday. But they did not sign, Trump and Zelensky did not sign the rare earth minerals deal. So the rare earth that Trump was hoping to get from Ukraine, he may not get it. And remember, like I mentioned, most of those rare earth minerals that Trump is looking for from Ukraine is actually in the territories that Russia controls today. Yes, Trump can decide to do a deal with the Russians to have access to it, yes. And Ukraine is not the only place in the whole world to get that. So if Ukraine is not the only place in the whole world to get that, who says that Trump and the United States are not going to look to Africa? Beyond Europe and United States, who says that no other country in the world is not looking for rare earth? China needs rare earth minerals. It does. China needs them for AI, for technology, for military. It needs them. At the end of the day, Africa is at the center of this whole thing. So let me know what you think about this development in the relationship between the United States and Europe, and also the verbal fights, the shouting competition that took place between Zelensky, Trump, and JD Vance. Let me know in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your family members, your friends, everyone you hold dearly, so that we know every Africans are awakened to what is really going on in the world, so that Africa can take its rightful place with its geopolitical interest, economic interest, and even political interest in mind in the multipolar world. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here, I would really appreciate it. Please use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. And don't forget that Ukweli is live. Our African movement, our African media movement is live. If you want to join us to use your voice to awaken Africans, for Africans to understand what is going on in the new world, in this world that we live in today, please sign up for Ukweli with the link in the description. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to play a video for you about two videos about is happening in the US Congress. One, a senator in the US Congress made a bold allegation that US aid is funding terrorist groups across the world, including Boko Haram. He mentioned Boko Haram. He said US aid was funding Boko Haram activities, right? And then the second video is where there's a hearing in also in the United States Congress where the senator is asking some guys about US aid activities in funding terrorism. And this gentleman mentioned Al Shahab in Somalia, funded by US aid. So watch these two videos and I will come back to delve into that.
Who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding.
Mr. Roman, are you aware that we are sending $40 million a week to the Taliban?
Yes, sir.
Can you name other instances of foreign aid going to terrorist organizations?
We have assisted Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There's been instances of the Hamzi network in Sudan, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Kataib al-Hezbollah, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria. Dozens of terror organizations have received indirect assistance from U.S. foreign aid.
Did you hear that? Listen, when people hear USAID, right, we tend to think, oh, USAID. And I spoke about this initially when Trump was halting USAID's activities for 90 days. But right now, he has dismantled it like 90% dismantled and it's been integrated into the State Department. Or whenever they discuss this whole USAID thing, they say, oh, it helps people fighting with HIV, people living with HIV and AIDS in South Africa, all across Africa. It helps with poverty alleviation. USAID is building schools. Blah, blah. Those things are just a mask. If USAID spends say one say spends 1,000, if you look closely, less than 10%, maybe like 2%. I'm not exactly sure of the figure. I'm saying, but maybe like 2% goes into all this so-called humanitarian work. Most of the things that USAID does is this. This is it. USAID is one arm of the, how we can say the Hydra, the empire's Hydra is one arm. Another thing you would look at is the National Endowment for Democracy. In fact, I just found out that Donald Trump, not just though, but sometime last week or so, Donald Trump also said there were reports that Donald Trump is putting a halt to funding for the National Endowment for Democracy. That is the NED. All these things are regime change apparatus. Whenever you have a government who is focused on your country and wants to help your country do certain things, and the United States is looking at that government as a threat to US hegemony in your country, these are the tools that they use to remove that government. These are the tools they use to instigate protests in your country. These are the tools they use to fund media in your country who that is going to paint your leadership bad because your leadership is not towing the line or is not dancing to the beat of of America's drum. These are the tools they use to do it. And if things get too tough, these are the tools they use to unleash terrorism in your country or instability or banditry. These are the tools. I was listening to when this whole USAID funding, when the first senator mentioned that USAID is funding Boko Haram, was funding Boko Haram, right? I was listening to some Nigerian, because I'm in Nigeria, I was listening to some Nigerian media outlets discuss this, and they kept saying, oh, we need evidence to prove that this is true, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing that came to my mind is you are hearing a senator sitting in the Congress make this statement. Like when someone, for example, now, if a case is in court, right, and people are making affirmative, they are making statements such as this, the lawyers tend to invite them to give their accounts, and the court takes it, they take it seriously and they listen. Then they cross-examine them. But to say, oh, because a senator sitting in the Congress said it, then it doesn't mean anything. It means something. It means something. What other evidence do you need? Several times in Nigeria, for example, locals will tell you that they will see helicopter coming with weapons, handing these weapons over to bandits. There's been several reports talking about how international organizations are funding terrorism in Africa. There's been several reports. So yes, I would take this statement made by the senator in the United States. I would take it seriously. Then what about the second video I played for you, where this one is question and answer, and this the question and answer is coming out in the affirmative. I'm trying to pick my words here carefully because of the platform that we are using, so I don't get strikes with the platform that we are using. Well, these are the kind of so what could have been clearer than that? Please explain to me. What could have been clearer than that? Many of these media institutions that are saying they're trying to downplay this whole talk about USAID funding terrorism in Africa are media institutions funded by USAID. Many of the social media influencers who are saying, oh, this is not necessary and trying to downplay this whole thing are social media influencers funded by USAID. Funded by USAID. Of course, they want to downplay it because they have they are invested in it. Listen, right? I'm bringing up this comment. Like I said, this didn't happen. It didn't happen recently. It happened like 2 weeks ago, right? So it's not like something that happened recently. I'm bringing this up now so that you realize that the world we live in is not what many people say. The world we live in, there is an orchestrated effort by certain individuals who wanting to maintain being the big dog, the hegemony. Listen, yeah, being a hegemon for over 70 years, United States being the world's hegemon for over 70 years, particularly more in over 30 years since the collapse of the Soviet Union, United States being the global supreme power did not happen by chance. It did not happen because America sat down and they were praying, oh, we want to be the big dog in the world. It didn't happen like that. It happened by making determined plans. It happened by creating institutions to foster United States agenda in the whole world. The reason we consume Hollywood movies and music and it's not because Hollywood they act the most. No, American government funded Hollywood. So for America's soft power, because while we need hard power, military power, we also need soft power. In fact, the soft power that is used the most to maintain supremacy in the world is soft power. We all used American technology, not because the American technology was the best. We always said it was the best. We said it was the best because of American propaganda, but not because no other person had the brains to produce that. No. Okay, look at how all of us were using Chat GPT, right? Always the best until China gave us DeepSeek. And once China gave us DeepSeek, we found out that DeepSeek was better than ChatGPT. I've tried the both of them. In several things I tried to use them for. Many times, DeepSeek, based on my experience, not just gives me that thing that I want, but it remembers the instruction. Now, when I know this is not supposed to be to talk about these generative AI platforms, right? Well, one thing I noticed with ChatGPT that if you give it an instruction, it remembers it. But after you communicate for a while, it then forgets that instruction. You have to remind ChatGPT, right, to do that. But DeepSeek, I never had those issues with it. We always said, oh, America's social media algorithm is the best, it's the best, until we saw TikTok. TikTok's algorithm is sophisticated. So it's not because nobody, countries outside the US could not think. No, it was an orchestrated plan to keep United States at the forefront of the global affairs, right? Okay, all of us are using the dollar. It's not as if we don't have currency. It's not like we don't have currencies. But like I said, these people were so smart. They were so smart and so proactive and so intentional that they created the world that they wanted. It may not have benefited the whole world. It may not have benefited every American, but it benefited the people they wanted it to benefit. I said all of that to say this. Now that we have heard about outsiders and even allegedly institutions like the USAID funding terrorism in your country, I want you to remember that we in Africa, for Africa to come out of this place that we are, one of the things that I discussed, really want you to go and watch that episode, that conversation I had with SL Kafan. I'll leave the link in the description. One of the things that we discussed with SL Kafan, I discussed with him, is how you Russia came from the floor, literally from the floor. How Putin took Russia from nothing to global power. We had that discussion, but it was an orchestrated plan that Putin and his administration had to do that with Russia. So if we in Africa want to live a worthy life, a life of prosperity, a life of wealth for Africans, for the everyday Africans. If we want that, if we want this whole story of Africa is poor, if we want to put an end to it, we need to make an orchestrated plan. Africa should not be the place where anybody can come and beat their chest to feel big. The USAID is over. The National Endowment for Democracy is over. Good, very good. Trump has stopped funding for that. Very good. But if we fold our arms and we just watch, another one can come in. That's why I said we need our African media movement. Please join Ukweli. The link is in the description. Join Ukweli so that more of us can raise our voice for Africans to know what is going on in this world. Join Ukweli. I'll leave the link in the description. We also have social media channels. You can follow us on social media, right? So if you just fold our arms and watch, you say, "Oh, thank God, USAID is gone. Oh, thank God, the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED is gone. Oh, thank God, all these regime change institutions are closing up one after the other. Trump is bringing an end to it." If we just fold our arms and watch, more can come in. Remember that the people who set up the USAID and the NED and all those other institutions that set them up to benefit them, they are still at play in the US. They are still there. So don't think they are going to roll over and say, "Oh, Trump ended is good for us." No, they will fight and they will push back. Okay, more recently now in the UK in 10 Downing Street, they were having a debate. Not really a debate, they were having a conversation. So the Kestama, the Prime Minister, said they were going to reduce aid, international aid. We're going to reduce and so some social services, right? They were going to reduce aid. The UK is reducing aid so that they can put more money into defense. So they want to take their defense from, is it from 2.3 to 2.5, something like that of GDP, right? Oh, what? Okay, you UK is reducing aid. Good. Who says another one will not come? All these NGOs, they still exist though. So for Africa to completely liberate itself, we need to be proactive. What is the African narrative? Next week, I'm going to have a conversation with a very important geopolitical analyst in Africa. We are going to discuss Pan Africanism. We are discussing Pan Africanism so that Africans will know what role we play in this world and how we can and why it is of essence that we work together. Do you understand? Yes, USAID was funding Boko Haram, allegedly funding Boko Haram. Okay, now that USAID is out of the picture, what are we going to do so that such a thing does not happen again? What are we going to do? These are questions we need to ask. These are questions we need to ask. What are we going to do? Because if we fold our arms, more other things, more, it may have a different name, but more things will come in to achieve the same purpose in your country, to achieve the same purpose in Africa. So now more than ever, Africans need to be alert. We need to be alert. We need to let Africans know what is going on. That is why we have Ukweli. That is why we have Ukweli. We need to be proactive. We need to create the African agenda. When we put all these things in place, that is when we can say definitely the next 25 years, the next 50 years, the next 100 years will be an amazing time for Africa. But if we do not do any of those things, the way we have been, what we've been experiencing for the past 500 years, from the Europeans to the Americans, we will continue experiencing it. We will continue experiencing it. So let me know. Share your thoughts with me in the comment section below. What do you think about the accusations that USAID was funding terrorism, Boko Haram to be precise, in Africa, and even in Somalia, funding Al Shabaab, and chaos all across the continent? Let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everybody you love, your family, your friends, your colleagues, everybody, so that Africans can be aware of what is going on in this world and how we can stake our claim in a multipolar world. If you want to support the work, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who has supported me on this show financially on Buy Me a Coffee. Your contribution has helped make this show a reality and helped make me keep releasing this show every other week, apart from these 2 weeks where I was not feeling too well. So thank you so much for your support. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description and it's also on the screen. And I am also hoping that you join me, especially those of you who are interested in media. You want to write blog posts, you want to run podcasts, you want to do your YouTube channels, you want to use social media to push the African agenda. If you're interested in doing that with media, please join me on Ukweli. The link is in the description. Thank you so much. For our final discussion today, a Nigerian investigative journalist, David Hundening, last week he released a report about British intelligence getting involved in Africa's social media conversation, right? So discussions that are going on within Africa, the British intelligence based on David Houdini, the British intelligence is monitoring our conversations on social media. And there anyone who is saying a narrative that is not consistent with what the British want Africans to know. They are using some African so-called journalists to fact check these people and brand them as, well, as you expect, Russia disinformation. So that's what has been going on. Three things I want to mention about this report from David Hundening. Number one, do you know what it means for the British intelligence to be their job, a certain group, right, in the MI6, one of their deliverables, their job description is to sit down and to monitor the conversations of Africans. They will come out tomorrow to tell you that you're not important. Tomorrow, they will come out to tell you that you're not important. If we are not important. If Africa is so inconsequential, what is the British intelligence doing monitoring our conversation on social media? You should leave we and our unimportant selves alone. But you are important. They tell you that you're not important so that you would see yourself less and expect nothing for yourself and for your country and have no aspirations, because the more useless and unimportant you feel, the more they can come in and do with you as they please, and as they've been doing for centuries. There are some people right now in London that their job is to go to our social media platforms, look at what they are discussing in Nigeria. Oh, this is the major topic in Nigeria. Oh, this is what they are discussing. Kenya, this is what they are discussing. South Africa, this is what they are discussing. Ghana, this is what they are discussing. Egypt, this is what they are discussing. That's their job. Then anyone that is saying something that they don't want other Africans to know, they will use your own journalists with your own people and say, to label those ones propaganda, Russian propaganda, Kremlin puppets, Putin stooge. That what else? Is that not really that's the oldest at this point. Russian propaganda should be another word for critical thinking. Because if you say that and you think and you come up with the truth, somehow that truth is labeled Russian propaganda. So anytime I hear people say Russian propaganda now, all I hear is critical thinking. That's what it is. Tomorrow they'll tell you you're not important. What? Tell me who, what can be the greatest proof of your importance if not this? If not this? That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to discuss is this so-called fact checkers that the British intelligence is using to downplay critical thinkers within the African media space who are discussing things that the British don't want other Africans to know. These so-called journalists that are fact-checking and labeling their fellow Africans as Russian propagandists, how much are they paying them? Peanuts. Peanuts is how much they're being paid. Now, it's very possible that these journalists don't know that they're part of an intelligence effort. It's very likely they don't know. It's very, very likely they don't know that they're part of an intelligence effort. But you that just comes out to say call something Russia propaganda or fact check something because you are being paid to fact check it, there should be you should now think that you yourself should know that you've sold out. And this is the same thing. Sometime last year, I heard the president of Burkina Faso make a statement, and he said back then colonization was able to happen, slavery was able to happen because there were people within Africa who were willing to sell out their countries and their continents and their people. That's why it could happen. They could kill Thomas Sankara because there were people within Burkina Faso, people who were close to Thomas Sankara that were willing to sell him out to the outsiders. They were able to stifle Africa's economic growth because they had puppets in office, in power all across Africa that were willing to play with outsiders to the detriment of their respective countries. So these journalists are no different from those people who connived to kill Thomas Sankara with outsiders. They are no different from those people who connived with King Leopold to cut off the arms and the legs of their fellow Africans. They are not different from those other Africans who worked with the Europeans to sell their brothers and their sisters to slavery. They are no different. And they sold out for peanuts. They sold out for peanuts. They sold out for peanuts. And this is why you realize that poverty in Africa is an intentional thing. Because by the time you weaponize poverty, you can get hungry people to do anything. It takes a certain level of integrity that even if you are hungry, you say no and you stand up to do the right thing. It takes integrity. Integrity that not everybody has. Because tell me why they can pay an African journalist, I'm just throwing out a figure now, £300. What is £300? If you are, for example, in Nigeria today, 5 years ago, the value of pounds 5 years ago and the value of pounds today is not the same thing. Maybe that £300 today was probably like £2,000 5 years ago. Do you understand? So all these figures are even rubbish. They're nothing. They're nonsense. They're nonsense. Weaponization of poverty. You say you're a journalist, but you are being paid to take a certain narrative. You are being paid to say a certain thing. You're not a journalist. You're a parrot. That's what you are. You're a parrot. Paid to say something, paid to lie. One of the things that they were fact checking and were people who were speaking up against, say, foreign influence in African countries or even GMOs, genetically modified food that are coming in full force in different African countries. They are labeling them Russian disinformation. Then the third thing I would say to round off this segment, because when I heard this story, it pained me. The strong point for me, the thing that kept recurring to me was just look at what poverty does. People sell out their country, their continent, a continent of billions of people sold out for £300. No shame. The third thing I will add is the world is changing. Maybe by now it should be the motto of this of this show. The world is changing, but the world is indeed changing, and the African way before is not the African way today. Whether or not you like it, African countries, some are doing it faster than others, right? Some others we really like them to accelerate. But Africa is pulling itself and beginning to take some positions that if we continue in this momentum in the next decade, many of these European countries they cannot they cannot keep doing this nonsense. Each time when I talk about things like this, I say these kind of things, would they pay a Chinese £300? Things like this cannot happen in China. So many times it can happen like this in Africa because of poverty. But that whole story of poverty is changing and is changing fast. I heard David Munde mention, which is something that made a lot of sense to me. He said, for example, Africa's role before now has been just a place for natural resources, for natural resource extraction. That's it. So Africa cannot have wild dreams to become industrialized. Mm-mm. Those dreams are not for you. It's for the West. Your job is just to be a place where we collect raw materials and cheap labor. Children who can work in mines. The children will not work in mines in their country, but they will have children working. They will have children rather work in mines in Africa. So David Hunde said all of this is changing. Before now, Nigeria has always been exporting crude oil, crude oil, crude oil, crude oil. But for the first time since the creation of Nigeria, Nigeria is exporting finished oil. Petroleum is just, and not just processed or refined oil, but also refined complete petroleum products, finished petroleum goods. Nigeria is exporting with the Dangote refinery. Nigeria is exporting it now. In fact, there was a report from the OPEC, if I'm not mistaken, but I read it in one of these business publications of the West, maybe Bloomberg or something, or CNBC, but one of these business reports. I read it, sorry, business publications. I read it that Dangote refinery has cost Europe billions in oil, billions, because now we are not really buying from Europe. And the more things like this continue, the more Europe loses. But Europe is not my concern. My concern is Africa. I did not swear allegiance to Europe. My business is Africa. Do you get me? Now that we're talking about Dangote refinery, I just heard Tony Elumelu of um uh, what's this? Ooh, I'll put it on the screen. I've forgotten his energy group. But I just heard Tony Elumelu discuss. He's coming into um the energy sector. He's already playing the energy sector, but there are certain things they are doing. Also, they're coming in big. The same thing with Femi Otedola. So that Dangote fighting, and I hope he keeps fighting because he's still receiving a lot of pressure, right? But Dangote fighting to make sure that the refinery runs, not just run, but refinery supplies oil to the local market and to international market, is making it possible for these other businesses to spring up in the next 10 years. I bet that Nigeria is not going to be importing any form of oil, of energy. We will be self-sufficient in energy because Dangote is taking the heat for everybody. Let him continue. Do you understand? David Hunde also mentioned, and this thing, like I mentioned, this thing has not been seen in Nigeria's history ever. This is the first time. It continues like this. This is economic liberation for Nigeria. David Hunde also mentioned that Burkina Faso has been a place they'll just take gold and go. They'll come and take gold and go. But right now, for the first time ever, Burkina Faso is exporting refined gold. And this story is all across Africa. And the more, right now, it's going to be, this is the first step. So the first steps are usually quite difficult. But once we pick momentum, it will move across Africa like this. That era of coming to Africa to do this nonsense of weaponizing poverty in Africa is ended. I'm telling you. I am telling you, watch the tide. So right now you will be looking at it and say, oh, I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. See that era of kleptocracy is over. Mark my words, it's over. Right now, like I mentioned, right now it's looking like nothing is happening because the first steps are usually the most difficult ones. If you're watching a child learn to walk, right? When the child is learning to walk, those first steps are very difficult. The child will fall, stand up again. The child will fall, stand up again. Sometimes look as if with this child is going to walk. But the more that child keeps at it, keeps trying to walk, the more that child keeps at it, pretty soon the child will start running. That's why I said with Africa, this is our first steps of economic liberation, of self-sufficiency. It's not going to be easy. It's not. But let us keep at it. We're going to win. Look at Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso just implemented something because right now he's moving fully into agriculture. And now he's bringing the prisoners in Burkina Faso. He's giving them deals that they should work in farms. They should work in farms, right? It's a good thing. We need to be self-sufficient with agriculture. The reason why Africa is reliant on food imports is because of some very wicked deals we signed with the World Trade Organization. We'll go into that topic later. I'll have a conversation with someone so that we can discuss all these Bretton Woods institutions, what they did to Africa. I want to have that conversation. But for now, I need you to understand that the reason Africa is so reliant on import with everything, food, cars, everything, it's because of some wicked treaties that we signed with the World Trade Organization. But all of this, all of this, all those institutions, all these things are breaking up. They are breaking up now. There are rumors. I don't know if this is true. Okay, Donald Trump just pulled out of the World Health Organization. He said it's not funding. Nobody ever thought such a thing could happen. Now I'm hearing rumors that Donald Trump is going to pull off from the IMF and the World Bank. I don't know how true that is, but like I said, they are just rumors. But what I'm saying is that we are seeing things that people would never have ever thought possible. It's happening right in front of us. Right in front of us, it's happening and it's happening fast. So therefore, we need to understand that as those things are happening internationally, it's a cue for we in Africa to move with speed, because this is the best time. Everything that we want to get done in Africa, this is the best time to get it done. This is the best time we can get it done. So let me know what you think about this whole British intelligence coming to monitor our conversation in Africa on social media, and also using the tried and trusted, even though now it's actually just stupid Russian disinformation tag. I think when they say Russian disinformation, at this point, I look at it as critical thinking. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below, and also the changes going on in the world, and even the changes going on in Africa. Share your thoughts with me in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everyone you hold dear, everyone you love, so that they can be aware of what is taking place in Africa and how they too can become a part of the change that we're experiencing here. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, I appreciate your support so far. Please use the Buy Me Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. And finally, if you want to join us in awakening Africans, you want to use media to awaken Africans of their geopolitical, economic, and political interest in the multipolar world, join me on Ukweli. The link is in the description. Join me in this African media movement so that we can transform the story of Africa together. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of The Amanda Show. I'm back. I'm healthy. I feel fine. I'm sorry for the last few weeks that I couldn't make it. I wasn't feeling too well, but I'm feeling a lot better now. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of The Amanda Show. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.